Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a video from Rifle Icon. Today we're going to be actually starting a whole brand new series, kind of in collaboration with some of our people working together with the brand. We're working on something kind of like a return on investments. We're calling it ROI. And a part of ROI is taking ideas that we find out in the world and trying to apply them here at Rifle Icon to actually work with our brand and try to generate some funds while we're at it. Today, it's one of those ideas that I've been working on for a while. We are working on something called Microgreens, a microgreens farm that will be used to help fund projects as well as provide healthier food for people all around us. So I know what you guys are thinking. What are microgreens? And to give you guys a very, very brief little description, microgreens are basically the plants that are between sprouts and baby greens, okay? For me, I'm going to be planting a couple of broccoli plants and bok choy plants together so that you guys can actually see kind of the process as well as kind of get some of the ideas together for yourselves on types of businesses that you should be running, right? So to kind of give you guys the 411, I have been working at an agricultural company for the last about a year, actually, straight out of COVID. And one of the things that I had no idea about was agriculture. I was just an economics and an entrepreneurship major that just graduated, and I had no idea about it. But luckily, I was able to join the company based on just my merits as well as some family ties, right? But the first thing I did for the first month was lock myself in my office during my lunch hours and did a lot of in-depth research about the industry and how all of it connects to each other, as well as what are some of the new ideas that are coming out. And microgreens was one of the first ideas that come across my desk. And the instant I looked into it, I fell in love with it because it really challenges a lot of the ideas that agriculture really has been for the past 100,000 million years, right? You get a whole new type of agriculture kind of developing all around us. And it's actually quite exciting because it's just a new opportunity for people to actually chase for themselves. So to kind of begin, microgreens, like I said, are just regular plants. You take them and you grow them in a 10 by 20 tray traditionally. You can grow them in anything you want, but the industry standard is 10 by 20 inches, okay? And what is neat is that in the microgreen setup, you are growing these plants within a short amount of time. So they're only going to get probably about this big. And I actually grow broccoli, bok choy, and sunflower, okay? The advantages for growing these plants in such a short amount of time are you don't need fertilizers for most of the plants that you're growing, besides some of the very smallest of seeds. You really don't have to worry about any kind of pests besides possibly funguses or molds. And I personally don't actually use any genetically modified seeds. I just use plain old seeds because you don't have to engineer them for like pest control. You don't have to engineer them for the conditions like water and whatnot, because you are getting the full package when you get just a regular plain old seed. And that saves a lot of money, as well as kind of concerns using pesticides and whatnot. So those are some of the little advantages. On top of that, for my setup, what I use to grow at least broccoli and bok choy, I use a silicone dehydrator mat, and it is totally reusable. It's totally food grade, so it won't degrade, the silicone at least. And it allows for me to set up a plant in the perfect harvesting condition and the perfect growing condition, because these plants will literally take care of themselves. And I have to put maybe 10 minutes from seed to harvest on these plants. The grow time is about 2 weeks, but I don't really have to touch them after I plant them, and I don't have to cut anything. I can just pull them out of the silicone right after they're ready to harvest. And I think that's a really huge advantage because I am cutting down on my labor when I do it that way, as well as the cost of the medium. So the silicone dehydrator mats are totally reusable. I throw them in the laundry machine. I throw them in the dishwasher. I put them through 2 runs, and then I use food grade hydrogen peroxide to sterilize the whole setup. So it's quick to clean up, it's quick to harvest, and it's easy to grow. And that's kind of the reason why I love actually using it. Now, numbers wise, if you kind of look at it from a cost standpoint, I'm spending about $2 on planting. That includes seeds, that includes the medium, that includes the trays. All of it costs about $2 to plant, okay? Takes 2 weeks to grow, and depending on what kind of product you're producing, how much you're producing, you can expect it to go for at least $10, $15, $20, right? And what's also interesting is that you can do what I do, where I mix similar seeds that are going to grow at the same amount of time, which is bok choy and broccoli, which we'll be planting today. These two grow, they both have the same grow time of about 2 weeks, and I can sell them as a bundle for, instead of $10 or $15, I sell it for about $13. And what's neat is I use half of the seed for both of these, but I'm still getting about 50 cents more than what I would if I were just to sell at regular market price per tray, if that makes any sense, right? I'll explain it again. Like if I were to take half of the seed of a standard broccoli tray, just half of the seeds, I'd be able to sell that half of the seeds for $5, okay? If I were to take bok choy and take half of the seeds, I'd be able to sell the half of the bok choy for $7.50. If you add those together, it's $12.50. I usually sell 30 or 13. So that means for the broccoli and the bok choy, they're actually earning 50 or 25 cents extra per seed species, right? So that is one of the advantages of actually planting them both at the same time. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put up a nice little picture showing you guys like what my setup looks like. You're going to notice a heating pad. You're going to notice a 10 by 20 tray. You're going to notice the lights. When it comes to the operating cost, that $2 covers the electricity and it covers the water because I just use regular tap water, a little bit of hydrogen peroxide, not that much, maybe about an ounce, just an ounce, keeps everything clean. And I also use some nice little grow lights from Amazon that have a timer on them. So it's not hard to set up at all. It would take you, honestly, 2 weeks to set up, and that includes the delivery cost or the delivery time for all the stuff that I have that had to come here. But none of this stuff, as soon as you get the initial seed capital into it, it's not going to break unless you're doing something incredibly stupid with it. But anyway, that is just kind of the rundown for the initial idea to get you guys acclimated into it. We are going to show you the setup. We're going to show you how I actually plant them. And then we will eventually come out with a second video where I actually show you how I harvest them as well as package them and kind of market them as well. Because it's a whole process to get these microgreens in the ground, honestly, or off of the ground into these plastic trays and into the mouths of some of my friends and family. So definitely stick with it. Let me show you right now how we get it done, okay? So, ladies and gentlemen, like I was saying, here is the setup. It's actually quite simple. Here up top, you see we have the silicone dehydrator mat. Zoom in a little bit for you. See that right there? There's a lot of holes there. That is actually the perfect size to catch each of these seeds. So when you put them down, the seeds will actually roll into these holes, and since water can get through, it'll provide the perfect haven for these seeds to absorb the water and then begin to grow. What's also nice is as the seeds are growing, the water level will actually always be within the reach of the roots, because the roots will grow as the as the plant grows, as it takes in nutrients. Not nutrients, it takes in water and carbon dioxide. The plant will continue to grow, and this will allow for the most optimized water level for your plants, which is actually totally perfect with me. Eventually, the plants will get to the size, like I was saying, about this tall, right, on top side. And that is when I'll be able to pull them out and then use them for consumption or sell them to somebody else, right? So what's important, though, when you're doing something like this is that you get this relatively flat. The silicone needs to be relatively flat so that the seeds don't actually start dipping into the water, okay? On top of that, you also have to make sure that the seeds are evenly distributed enough so that they aren't on top of each other the whole time. Because what happens is when you get water, the seeds will tend to stick together. And as soon as they start sticking together, you have a higher chance of the seeds developing funguses, molds, and whatnot. So it's always better to make sure you keep them evenly distributed because that's also your grow space. So you got to make sure both of these are just something you pay attention to. So what we're going to do is we're going to first add the water. It's important to add the water. You will add the water so that it basically touches the silicone right here. You'll be able to tell. You'll fill it up with approximately 2 gallons of water based on this 10 by 20 tray that I have. It could be different based on what containers you use for it. But that's how much water I put, and then I add the hydrogen peroxide afterwards. I use 12% food grade. So it's a little bit more powerful than the stuff you see, but I don't have to use as much, so which is why I use only about an ounce of it. And then I will put the seeds down, and I will put another 10 by 20 tray right on top of it. Of course, I will be spraying that with hydrogen peroxide as well, so that way it's nice and clean. But that will make it so that these plants will have the best chance of growing. I only keep the tray on for about 3 days. I take it off, and then I set these wonderful little grow lights up. I use standard grow lights, red and blue wavelengths. I haven't done any measurements on them for like what kind they are. They're bam. You see a nice little purple. You could have red. You could have just blue. Personally, I just do both of them because I'm not a botanist. I don't know the plant sciences behind it. But what I do is make sure it is on a lower setting. Not the lowest setting, but a lower setting. So that way my plants are encouraged to actually grow a little bit more. And finally, with a handy dandy little timer, you can't quite see it, I set it on 12 hours a day. And because the plants are always in water, they can handle the 12 hours without too much of an issue. Finally, you guys can't see it, but right underneath is just my handy dandy little heating pad. Keeps it at around 80 degrees, so that way the plants don't get too cold down here in my basement. So now everything's set up besides getting the water and the seeds in, and I'll show you guys that next. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have gone to the seed stage. Now, Rightful Icon currently is not sponsored by True Leaf in any way, shape, or form. They didn't buy them. I bought these on my own, but these are the seeds that we use. This one is the broccoli, and this one is the bok choy. Well, if you guys don't care about the name so much, broccoli and cabbage. I just call it Asian cabbage for some of the people who don't care about bok choy that much, but blah, 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 right? Anyway, what we're going to do is I'm going to put half a count of the seeds into the tray from both of these plants, or both of these bags of seeds. The only reason why you'll notice that I don't use any measuring things is because I've done it enough times where I know just the perfect amount for each of these seed types. I put about, I put a very small amount in. There's 16 ounces per bag. I put 1 ounce of seed in per each plant, of course. And Then I lightly mist it with water and make sure that the water level is touching all of the seeds. So now I'm going to show you exactly how we do both of those. All right, ladies and gentlemen, here is our little plot. Now, it doesn't matter which seeds you do first, just make sure you do it before you water it. Because what you'll find is that when you water it, the plants won't want to separate as easily as you would when they're dry. So, here we go. First things first. Just put a little bit of broccoli down, not too much. There we go. Not too much at all. Now, you see what I'm talking about right down here. Just so you guys know, my hands and the screen have both been washed down with hydrogen peroxide just a little bit before, and then I let it dry. So now it's easier to move the seeds around. Of course, the hands are also washed, making sure we keep everything sanitary right here. Next, we're going to be doing the second seed, which is bok choy in the center, but it doesn't have to be. So then you just fill the rest in. And what's interesting is you notice that these seeds are pretty much identical when you actually start working with them, and I find it to be so interesting just based on how the plants work, that they're pretty similar. There we are. Just like that, we have them seeded. The next thing we do is add the water. Now, my setup uses a water jug that I picked up from my old college days. Ta-da! You can't see everything. It's just a standard little water reservoir. It holds just about 5 quarts. It actually is not 2 gallons, like I said, but you'll make the best of it. So now what I'll do is I'll fill this up 2 times, and then I will fill it up a 3rd time, but just top it off to the correct level. So here we go. All right, guys. So here comes the first round of water. Now, I'm going to make sure I pour it just fast enough so that the water gets in, but at the same time, it doesn't wash the whole thing. Here we go. Now, as you guys are probably paying attention, you'll notice that the water is also pooling on top of it just a bit. And that's all right if you use some more tacks like I do. I have 4 tacks on this little tray. It's not really enough to keep the silicone up, but I will be putting 2 more in to try and keep the seeds out of the water. As you can see, a lot of them are kind of washing in the middle, but I'll be fixing it in a bit. Notice how they're sticking kind of at the end. There we go. Bam. Now, let me get the second round of water for you guys. All right, guys, here we go for the second part. Now, this is the delicate part. It's getting really close to the top, so we got to make sure we don't overfill it. Because if we overfill, we spill. And if we also overfill, we're going to actually kill these plants. So we use our fingers, try and gauge where the water is. See, when you touch it just barely, it kind of goes down a bit. That's what you want. Because the next thing we're going to do, besides spread these seeds out again, is we're going to be putting a tray on top. When you put the tray on top, it puts enough pressure on this here silicone to cause the plants to actually go down, for the seeds to go just under the water line, and then the seeds will be encouraged to grow because it'll be nice warm water and it'll be nice and shady. But as you can see, it's been a minute since I've actually done a little bit of the seeding, so I might actually just put a little bit more on. It wasn't too bad though, but as you can see, as I'm kind of fiddling with it, the seeds are starting to stick together, so I can't do it too much. So next thing we're going to do is put the last bit of seed on and then cover it, and then that'll be the end of our first video. Now, like I said, it is important to make sure that the seeds are covered in the first 3 days, because if they're covered, they will push against the cover that you put on it. In my case, it's only a light tray, and this light tray will allow for the seeds to shoot their roots basically downward into the water. That way, the plants will have a little bit, kind of like a tree, the plants will have a little bit of a steadier base, while also simultaneously increasing the amount of produce that your plants will be actually growing. So you notice I just put a little bit in of each. This doesn't have to be an exact science, only because I'm not a commercial grower, and this is just kind of a test bed for the farms that we're working on. You just put on a little bit until you see you got a nice full tray. Perfect. Now the seeds are good. Hydrogen peroxide's already been put. I'm not going to spray this one because I think the water line's a little high, so I think it'll be just perfect. The only thing we'll have to look out for is, as these seeds are growing, the silicone is actually going to start to sag a little bit into the water. I might have to get another pin to make sure that doesn't happen too aggressively. Now, here's our sanitized little tray. We put it right on top. Push it down a little bit in spots so that all the seeds get the initial moisture they need. Heating pad is already set up, so they'll be nice and warm. And let me straighten it out a little bit so that way it looks sexy for the camera, of course. And ladies and gentlemen, we have officially seeded our first tray for Rightful Icon. Thank you guys so much. I'll be sure to get you guys the update video as we wait for this. This is day one. It'll be about a week until I actually show you guys what it looks like in that day. And then in another week, I'll show you guys what the harvest is, what the harvesting process is, as well as the marketing and the details behind it. But thank you guys so much. See you guys in the next video. Remember, it's got to be you.